Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's live stream with Keep Indiana Learning. I'm Jessica Miller, a professional learning specialist with the Keep Indiana Learning team, and we are part of the Central Indiana Educational Services Center. We are so excited that you've joined us for today's live stream. This is one of 3 live stream sessions focused specifically on our very exciting workshop. We have the Student Centered Coaching Workshop coming up here in September, and we're going to have some guests here to kind of prep us, get us ready, let us know what to think about, and also share with us their journeys with student-centered coaching and how it has impacted their work. We are so excited that you're with us today. I have with me Amber and Julie. Amber and Julie are going to be our hosts for our workshop in September. Our workshop is being hosted in partnership with Keep Indiana Learning and also the Center of Excellence in Leadership of Learning at the University of Indianapolis, where we will be actually having our workshop. So we are just so excited to tell you a little bit about our workshop across today's session. I am so excited to have Amber and Julie here with us. And Amber, why don't you start off? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, thanks for having us. We are so excited to be hosting this workshop for the first time in Indy. So lots of people are excited about it. We can't wait to get it off the ground. So to introduce myself, my name is Amber Birch Trujillo, and I work as a senior consultant at Diane Sweeney Consulting. I have the privilege of working with multiple districts across the U.S., a lot of them here in the Midwest because I'm housed here in Chicago, and then even some international schools that we have an opportunity to partner with. So I just love the opportunity to support districts, support individual coaches, support school leaders, and really getting student-centered coaching off of the ground. It is such a powerful opportunity. And so we're excited to be able to do that with more folks in this level 1 and level 2 workshop.
Well, thank you, Amber. Thank you so much for mentioning. It's our first time being able to host the workshop here in Indy, right? And we are very excited about that. Like you mentioned, bringing it into this space for the amazing coaches that we know are doing really great work around this area. Thank you. Julie, tell us about you.
Good morning. My name is Julie Steele. I'm also a senior consultant with Diane Sweeney Consulting, and I'm based in Kansas City. Amber didn't mention, but she's in Chicago. So we are close colleagues that only get to see each other a few times a year. So that's one of the reasons we're super excited to come to Indy together. Rarely do we get to bring our work together and co-facilitate a workshop. So I too support projects all across the country, and it's just such fulfilling work, and excited to bring more people into the network and into the fold. It does feel a lot like a family when you get into the work. So really excited to meet new faces and to hear new stories and see how this work is going to trickle out into the state of Indiana and beyond in September when we're there.
I love that. And I'm excited about this session because I know I've gotten to know the two of you in a couple of different spaces. And I always just love seeing an opportunity for you two to come together. I can tell that you really value the partnership and the friendship that you've been able to develop throughout the work. So thank you so much for being here. I did want to mention for our viewers, if you have any questions or are looking for more information about our workshop, I'll give you that website a couple of times today. But if you head to keepindianalearning.org/events, you'll be able to see all of our upcoming events, and our student-centered coaching workshop is one of them. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and jump in with our conversation today. And so I'd love to know, as you two kind of reflect on your journey and just kind of how you got to where you are with this work, what originally drew you into a space of student-centered coaching, or how might it align with the beliefs that you specifically have about coaching work?
Super. I can go first, if that's okay, Julie.
Thanks, Amber.
Yeah. So my background educationally is working in dual language. So I started as a dual language teacher in New York City public schools. So, and then from there have always worked in these very robust, diverse communities. And so part of the mindset that I was privileged to sort of develop as a bilingual teacher or a dual language teacher was really learning how to collaborate well with others, because we always have a lot of folks who are there to support our students, and also bringing sort of this asset-based mindset to the work that we have. So how do we see our students and our communities and the other colleagues we work with as folks that we can really partner with and learn from, and really see them as assets to the work. So when I had the opportunity to move into a coaching position, the school I was working, I was a first grade teacher there. And we began our coaching program. We looked at a lot of different options, and we really wanted to find one that just felt aligned with what our beliefs were around education, which is that educators are better together, that our students have a lot to offer, that we all have a lot to offer. So as we looked and researched a lot of different models or methodology, Diane Sweeney's Student Centered Coaching, the OG, the first book that had been published, it just rose to the top. And we had the great opportunity that Diane came in and trained our entire coaching team. She worked with our staff in really getting on board with coaching, worked with our school leaders, and it was an amazing opportunity. I think it was one of the most fulfilling parts of my educational journey. And so it really just consolidated for me how powerful this work can be and how helpful it can be for our students. And then when I decided to kind of move into my next step, I was lucky enough to begin working with this great team that we're on at Diane Sweeney Consulting. And now I get to share all of those experiences and continue to learn from other educators all around the world. So it's really, really a powerful opportunity. It just felt really aligned and continues to feel aligned with what's best in education, which is us working with each other, trusting each other, and doing what's right for our students. So that's a little bit about how it aligns with my beliefs.
Oh, it's so wonderful to hear you, kind of talk about that journey and that piece. And I think what's really resonating with me is that piece of finding a coaching structure or model that really aligned with you and the work that that you value, the partnerships that you value with the people that you're working with. And when we can find, what's that phrase, like all the arrows pointing in the same direction, right? And something that feels right, that fits right, that serves our purpose, it can be super powerful. Thanks for sharing that, Amber.
Yeah, thanks.
Julie, what about you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've known Amber for 4 or 5 years now, and I know so much about her story, but I've never heard her share it in that sort of nutshell. And what I find interesting is the more that I talk with people about what led them to student-centered coaching, as I support districts across the country, it's almost like there's this overlap of we believe in instructional coaching and that support that is necessary for teaching to really be effective. And yet people try a lot of different things and it doesn't quite feel like the right fit. And so it's just interesting. My background, I worked in a school district. I was in a school, an elementary school. So I was a teacher for 16 years. We didn't have instructional coaching. And it was kind of when PLCs started. And so that idea of collaboration was starting to gain traction and be important in our work, but just that's where it ended. You had these conversations and then you kind of went into your own space by yourself and trying to implement things that maybe you had co-created in that PLC space. And so I knew I wanted to get into school leadership, but I didn't want to be a principal. And so at some point I was on a district team or something where I really started exploring instructional coaching and didn't have it in my school district, but just really became curious about it. And then like Amber, I too moved into a brand new position at the district level, same district, where it was a tier 1 instruction specialist. And there were 2 of us serving 28, 29 schools. And one of the first things that we were asked to do was to identify an instructional coaching model that could be brought into our school. So this felt like, oh my gosh, finally it's going to happen. And so just like Amber's story, we explored several different approaches to instructional coaching and really trying to align find the model or find a framework that would best align with the culture of our district and schools within it. And we found this book, the OG, on Google, or I'm sorry, on Amazon. And so we ordered it, and Sarah, my former colleague, and I read it, and we had a couple of principals read it and got some excitement around it. And so we invited Diane, and this was fairly early on in her work where she was doing this full time. And so she partnered with our school district for several years. And, so I got to learn about the model. I got to be in a place where I was coaching from a district position. So I wasn't coaching in a school like Amber. had the opportunity to do, but, really trying to figure out how these core practices work. And like Amber, it just aligned with everything that I believed. It felt so good and it felt so right that we were really focusing more on what students need and how do we meet the goals that we have for them, and then what do we do instructionally to get there. And so it just felt so organic. And then back in 2019, I think Diane was growing her team. I think she was having the same conversation with Amber, who was in Chile at the time and was coming back to the United States. And so Amber and I kind of came together in this same time period. And then the pandemic happened. And I hate to mention that on a live stream, but it framed us in this position where we really had to run this model through a lot of testing. Like, does it still work if you're, teaching and learning from a distance and everything? So it just has such longevity to it and good results. And I think Amber and I both share a lot of things, and probably one of the big things is our passion around this work. We joke that it would be hard to live out of a suitcase doing work that you didn't really believe in.
Yeah.
So, that kind of like, as long as that still feels good to me, then I will continue doing it. So far, it's, it still feels right and true. So I think it speaks to what Diane and Leanna have created and how responsive they encourage us as a team to be, to, see what is going out into the field. And so, I think that's what helps keep us passionate about the work, is that it's always evolving. We are always figuring out how do we need to change up how we are supporting coaches, how coaches are supporting teachers, how teachers are supporting students, it just trickles down. So it's a fun place to be.
For sure. It reminds me so much of that idea of like, surround yourself with good people who want to do good work. And regardless, of which kind of team you're talking about and the partnerships that you have, it sounds like you have found good people doing good work, and you have to keep doing that good work with those good people, which is so wonderful. So you both talked a little bit about kind of your journey finding student-centered coaching and then landing on student-centered coaching, right? So Amber, could you talk to us a little bit about, as you were landing in that space of student-centered coaching, what would you say are some of the biggest strengths of student-centered coaching that you kind of identified and aligned with?
Yeah, and certainly it's grown even since I've had the opportunity to partner with such an eclectic group of districts and partners and individual coaches over time. But when I think about the greatest strengths, there's so many, so it's hard to kind of, capture them. But I think it's also kind of move sort of top down, right? So the big picture level down to the, nitty gritty on the ground coaching level, right? So when we think about that big picture in education, I think it's really helpful, especially when we're working with district leaders or folks who are investing in creating a coaching program, to mention that, all of our work is research-based. And it's aligned very closely with the visible learning research, right? I always, when I start with a district, like, how many Hattie nerds are out there? Like, kind of raise your hand, and, your people when they raise their hand.
Those are the ones you have lunch with.
Yeah. And so, but most powerfully, and the one that we've been talking a lot about, we've always have, but even deepening, I think, our work with the idea of collective efficacy and teacher efficacy. Right? Like, we are stronger together, and our model really believes in that. It's not just a belief system, but it is a series of really concrete ways in which a district can begin to build that power that we know is so impactful for our students, that collective efficacy, but also that piece of teacher efficacy, keeping people in the profession, right? Keeping us empowered to meet the challenges that education, provides us often, right? So that big piece of the power of that research, I think, is something we both know that we lean into a lot. And then a lot around the practical pieces of teacher clarity, how to build assessment capable learners, visible learning research around teacher clarity is such an important part of our work, how standards driven we are. And then the way in which some of the other practical instructional practices that we embed in our work, formative assessment is such a core piece of what student-centered coaches do because we're in classrooms with teachers. So I think that when we invest our time and invest our resources as a school or a district in this work, we want to make sure that it is aligned with, what we powerfully know from the research. So I think that that's the first big picture view. Another huge strength, I think, because I have the opportunity to work with such an eclectic group of educators and districts and schools, across the US and even abroad, what I think student-centered coaching really provides are these systems for alignment. And a lot of folks really appreciate that. And I know we did in the school that I was in, K to 12, or we were pre-K to 12, one big independent school. And so how do we align and make sure that our coaching, lives in to the same systems, the same practices across an entire district. And Julie and I both work with large districts, small districts, right? Independent schools. They really thrive when we're all, you said before, Jessica, kind of the arrows are pointing in the same direction. So it is super empowering to work with. You may be working with special ed coaches. I have one co-op I work with that's a special ed co-op. So does Julie, right? Sometimes it's a large independent school that are, K to 12. Sometimes it's a series of elementary schools. So it just really depends. But what we find is independent of the content they might be teaching, the grade level, it's a really powerful system that allows districts to really move forward with a clear vision. So those are kind of the big picture views. And I think on the ground level, the greatest strength, I think, is the way in which we partner with our teachers, right? And so student-centered coaching, we talk a lot about the fact that it's set on the stance of partnership. It's not about fixing teachers. It's inclusive. All teachers deserve a thought partner. It really does take that asset-based approach to our work together. And so on the ground level, through that partnership, what we know is we're able to then focus on what matters most, which is putting students at the center of our work, making sure our work is rigorous for all of our students, that all of our students are receiving, the high standards that they deserve. And through that process, working with teachers on effective instruction, which we also know based on the research is really powerful. So how do we put kids at the center of what we do and then learn together to help them get where we would hope they would go? So that's more on the ground level. And I know coaches that have maybe worked in a different model and switched to our model. It's just like, it's like a breath of fresh air. They're like, this is why we show up every day, right? We show up to, work together in the best interest of our students and empower each other. And so the core practices really support us in that. Working in coaching cycles really support us in that. And then the last thing that I think is really helpful kind of speaks to our own efficacy. So when we think about the strength of this approach, we have really clear systems and processes for measuring our efficacy. So I know as a coach, that's one of the things that can feel, just even on the coaches level, like, how do you know you're making an impact? When I was a first grade teacher across the year, I knew how much progress my students made from beginning to end of year. We want to empower coaches to feel the same way, right? Like, know thy impact, right? And so student-centered coaching has very robust tools for measuring our efficacy. And then those are also incredibly helpful for that systems-based work too. So how do we know that we have that strong return on investment? Where do we need to put more attention? How are we measuring our own efficacy? So as coaches, I think that that's incredibly helpful, and also from that systems-based way. So those are just a few of the strengths I see in the work that make it, as Julie said, like, worth it. So worth it. So powerful.
And unique.
Yeah.
I think what you talked about, Amber, a lot is what really sets student-centered coaching apart from a lot of different frameworks, which is why I think we were so drawn to it. Like, it's what you just shared there. That is it's sort of the crumbs that we keep following.
Yeah. And it's so aligned to a lot of the work that the big ambitious work that schools are doing right now, right? Like, rigor for all of our students, standards-based learning, effective instructional practice. It is so aligned with those big pieces that we have the responsibility to get done. So it helps us get done the hard work that we need to get done. And I think that that's why other folks also are completely drawn to it, because it seems to align with that big picture work in a school, and then gives the practices really practically for the coaches to be able to get that work and move in the right direction.
Absolutely. Really that piece too that you had said earlier about like everyone deserves a coach, right? Everyone deserves a partner. It is big, ambitious work that we are doing in schools. And so to have a coach that is driven with the same goals in mind that our schools have in mind, right? With teachers, coaches, all partnering together towards that work, I think is just very powerful stuff. So if we know those are the strengths, Julie, talk with us a little bit about when our participants come to our workshop in September, kind of what can they expect to learn about or to explore with the two of you as we work towards some of those strengths.
Yeah, so, Amber sort of created this picture of all of the results. So how do you get that up and off of the ground? So, if you were to go to Amazon right now, you could find 5 different texts around student-centered coaching that could do that for you, right? And we could even point you, read this one first and then read this one next. And so it's not about access, like you can only access information about student-centered coaching through the workshop. But it is a unique opportunity. Implementation of this work is it's not just a plug and play. Like, oh, I take this little module and I run it in my school and now we're implementing. So it's a process. And so what I love about the workshop is it brings people together that are curious about the model. They may have read all the books, they may have read nothing, but we create a space where no matter what your level of exposure and understanding of student-centered coaching is, there's a place for you. And so we've designed, especially this one in Indiana, we don't always do our workshops with level 1 and level 2, but this particular opportunity does have a level 1 and level 2. So level 1 is really to take a blank canvas with a large brush and one color and create a huge vision for what student-centered coaching is for participants in just 2 days. And there's a lot to it, right? So we add a lot and there's a lot of opportunity. In the workshop, unlike just reading the books, we start to add a little bit of detail. And we try to do that so that it matches any context that people are going to be walking through. So we give people the big picture of what the framework is and the core practices that underpin student-centered coaching. And we talk a lot about that so that people can have an understanding that what we're really trying to develop is a mindset around collaboration and partnership, like Amber talked about. And also give people that excitement of this is the tangible result that you can achieve with this model. And so that alone creates some excitement. And Amber, I think, mentioned earlier that for a lot of people, when they start talking about student-centered coaching, it sort of takes the pressure off. I have to be the expert in the conversation all the time. And I have to be able to go in and watch someone and know what to tell them about adjustments. And it sort of takes that pressure off. And that's the big thing in level 1. Also in level 1, we create a space to understand our coaching cycles, and all frameworks for instructional coaching have a coaching cycle, and ours is quite different. And so really giving people the opportunity to examine if they're currently using coaching cycles, what's similar and what's different, and what are some tweaks that I can make to get closer to this vision. But really, how do we set goals for that student learning and use goals and learning targets, which also goes into the teacher clarity work. I mean, it just aligns so nicely into that. And then that coaching cycle also gives us the space to effectively co-plan and coach in the classroom. So co-plan lessons and coach in the classroom. And so that's an opportunity that if a coach is feeling maybe like they're missing being in the classroom and being a teacher, that's where you really get to look at them, right? And I call it the grandparenting of teaching, because you get to go do it, and then you walk away and you go back to your coaching stuff. So you'll learn about that process. We also spend some time talking about what does scheduling look like? How do we engage teachers? How do we send a message to teachers that this is what coaching is? It's not this. And that takes on a different story for people if they've been doing coaching in a different way. Mm-hmm. So we give people strategies and tools to go through and do that. And then finally, in level 1, we spend some time talking about the principal coach partnership, which is one of our core practices, but it's also crucial in the success of student-centered coaching. Let me just say, it's not crucial in the success, but it increases the speed at which traction is gained and increases the success of coaching. It can be done without that partnership, but it is a slower, harder walk for a coach to try and do this on their own. So, in that space, we encourage coaches to work with their principal to define the role and to protect the role, as well as how do we foster a culture of learning here where student-centered coaching really lives in a healthy space. So that's kind of level 1 in a nutshell, right? And so we recommend level 1 for anybody who's brand new. And if you've just been dabbling on your own, probably level 1 is the space to do it. And that is even if you've watched all the videos and you've read all the blogs, but really just being with others, trying to figure out how do we make this work. We also recognize that there's a space for people who are in the midst of implementing, and they're in the work and they're doing it, and they are desiring a deeper level of learning for themselves. And so we developed level 2 a few years ago. And so that's really an opportunity to take student-centered coaching to the next level. And we see a lot of people come by themselves, but we also support a lot of teams that come together. It's them not only a space to collaborate within each other, but to learn from people outside of their own space. So, sort of opens up the chamber of information that they're getting. So in level 2, it's really built around learning new strategies that just goes into a deeper level of looking at collective teacher efficacy, and how we introduce some new thinking about how do we coach into increasing cognitive engagement in students. And so it's sort of the peeling back the layers of student-centered coaching. We also Amber had mentioned measuring student-centered coaching, and that's important to us. We spend almost a half day digging deeper into that process with our results-based coaching tool. We use a lot of protocols that give coaches an opportunity to look at their own work. So they bring a portfolio of artifacts and gives them a chance to really reflect on the work that they've done, share it with others and celebrate, but also learn and grow and find new opportunities to enhance their own practice. And then at the end of level 2, we give them a little bit of planning time to figure out, what am I going to do new? How can I create something new? And so that's level 2 in a nutshell. But I want to highlight that in both levels, we try really hard to create a networking opportunity, because what we know is that instructional coaches, even if you're doing this work at a district level and you have a PLC, it's isolating. You're the only instructional coach in most cases in your school. And so being able to connect with other people who are also doing the same work is really powerful. And we know that it enhances implementation when you feel like, okay, I'm not alone. And now I have somebody maybe across the state or across state lines where I can reach out and connect to, because I like what they're doing. And so it's, again, building that collective teacher efficacy around teachers. So that's our best hope. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of learning, right? We pack a lot into a couple of days. So, but we also know that learning and the heavy lifting can be enjoyable. So there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of opportunity to talk and to wrestle with ideas embedded in both level 1 and level 2 of the workshop.
Can I add on to that, Julie? I think that while we are obviously ambitious about what we're hopeful folks will take away from it, we receive feedback often when we do these workshops that there is enough time for you to have some thought. right? And that is something that a lot of folks really appreciate and give us positive feedback about, which is let's think about something and then lots of opportunity to process and kind of figure out how that fits within your setting, right? Certainly, especially if you're in level 1 where you may be learning an entirely new framework or core practices you're not familiar with. We certainly try to create that space for you to pause and say, okay, what does this mean for me? How does it fit into my current schema for instructional coaching? What might be my just right next step? We really try and kind of guide folks along this learning. We call it kind of our learning journey, a learning map, and let them really apply that within their settings. So hopefully people will feel inspired by that idea, because this work matters to us. And we hope that folks that go will leave feeling empowered to actually put it into practice in their schools, or at least bring all that knowledge back to a team or an instructional leader that they're hopeful to partner with. So it's very practical, I think, in that way. And not all workshops are like that. So I thought I would highlight that as well.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is I may have scared a few people.
No, I don't think so. It's a lot. It is a lot of information. But I think that we do a pretty good job. We've run this many a times and do a pretty good job of making it feel practical as well.
It sounds very much like the workshop work is going to align with some of the approaches that we take with coaching, with student-centered coaching as well, right? Like this idea of partnership. So we're going to be responsive and flexible with it, and we're on the journey with you. And I think it's going to be a very exciting 2 days, definitely lofty ambitions as always for what we're going to walk away with. And so Amber, I appreciate the nudge, and Julie, the nudge to keep thinking about which level is right for us within this workshop, with where we are in our own journey with student-centered coaching, and also knowing that regardless of which level we get into, we're going to have a great opportunity to network and grow with people around us. And it's going to absolutely be amazing. So Amber and Julie, thank you so much for being with us today. We are so grateful to have you. We, of course, are so excited to see you again in September. Again, our workshop is September 9th and 10th at the University of Indianapolis, designed for new and veteran coaches. Whichever level feels kind of right for you, we'll let you choose which level makes the most sense. And we are excited to help you grow in your practice of student-centered coaching. I did want to mention that we have early bird pricing from now until June 1st. So if you're interested, we encourage you to get on and register. If you have any questions, feel free to email those to keepindianalearning@ciesc.org. And also know that this video and the other 2 shows in our live stream will be available for you on our live stream. If you have any questions or need more information, head to our website at keepindianalearning.org. And we hope to see you in September. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Thank you again, Amber and Julie.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate the space to talk about this.
Yeah.